Union Grove. Is that the name of the...
Yeah, this road here.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to episode 5 of the Lionel Travel Podcast. I am today in South London with my 2 cousins.
Yay!
Yeah. Alice and Amy. And I mean, yeah, being relatives, like, we go way back. Because I remember staying at you guys' place.
Do you?
In Hong Kong, yeah.
Wow.
Which one? The first? No, the second one.
It's gotta be the second one, pretty sure. It's like Yao Yat Chun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, okay, it's a weird memory, but you guys had these, like, tube pillows?
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
bolsters.
Yeah, bolsters.
Oh, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't know why we call them bolsters, but
Right.
that's what our mum said they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember there was like a Mickey Mouse one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was the first time I'd ever used a pillow like that. But it was so comfortable.
It is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
best. The best.
And because I think I'm generally a side sleeper. And it actually worked so well.
Yeah.
So like from that point on, I'm like, oh, okay, I definitely
You
need
need
to get
one.
one of those.
Do you have one?
I had one.
Oh, you had one.
I think I had like a lucid dream one point.
Really?
And then it felt like the pillow was strangling me.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so then I stopped using it.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, that kind of went in a
That's a
different
bit dark.
direction. Yeah.
Let's see.
Anyway, so it's been I think about 7 years since we'd last met.
Yeah.
Because you guys have been in the UK for quite some time now.
Yeah. We've been here for 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last time we saw you.
Yeah.
Was it in Hong Kong?
It would have been.
Okay.
Because this is my first time in the UK. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it would have been like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
For sure, so.
Did you guys come back to Hong Kong in 2017?
I think
No. Oh, did we?
Yeah, we did because I graduated
Oh, yeah.
then in 2017 and then I came. That was the last time I was back in Hong Kong. So, yeah. So it's been like 7 years since I was asked back. 6.5 maybe.
Yeah.
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 I'm pretty sure it was 17 when we
Okay.
last saw
Right.
each other. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it must have been so brief as well because I don't really remember it.
Yeah, I think it was just one day.
Must have
Was
been.
it?
Yeah, and we just walked around a mall.
Oh my
And-
goodness, yeah.
I don't remember that at all. Were
Yeah.
you with your brother and...
Yeah.
Okay.
He was back as well.
Gosh, I don't remember that at all.
It's all good. You don't have to feel guilty about
I remember.
it.
I remember our parents hosting a party,
Okay.
and you guys were there,
Yeah.
and Michelle, our second cousin,
Yeah.
was there as well.
Oh, yeah.
With Adi and his wife,
Jenny.
Yeah.
Jenny. Yeah. So I remember that
Mm.
that one night. I remember.
I think that was 2015.
That was
2015.
No, that
Yeah.
was 2014 because
No,
because
surely
Michelle was telling us about UK phone numbers and we were confused and so that because we hadn't been in the UK at the time,
Right.
so we didn't get a SIM card for like UK at like then.
Oh.
And I remember Michelle was telling us like the like number code is like +44
Yeah.
and then 7 something. And then but then when you're in the UK you don't have the +44, you just replace it with a 0.
Oh.
And I remember getting confused by that.
Right.
So that must have been before 2014. End of 2014. So you must have met...
Wait, but I didn't go to Hong Kong in 2014.
Maybe it was your brother then.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it was probably just Augustine.
Yeah, because that was the year I went to Korea.
Oh.
Yeah, so
wow.
I went with my high school friends and I tore my ACL skiing in Korea.
You tore it.
Yeah.
That's a serious injury.
It's a serious injury,
That
yeah.
must have been like months of rehab.
It was, yeah. So basically, I guess I'll just tell the story.
Yeah, tell us if we don't know.
So, me and 2 of my high school friends, it was our first like non-parental trip, so just going by ourselves. And it was very spontaneous, where like every day we basically just had a tourist map and we'd circle a place that this place looks cool, and then we'd just go. And it was so much fun, and we spent about 10 days in Seoul. And then after that, we went south of Seoul to another one of our high school friends. So he's Korean, and his parents live south of Seoul. So we went to visit them, and close to where they live is a ski field. And so we went there, and bear in mind, the only skiing experience I had before was not on a mountain. It was on basically an artificial slope.
Oh, that's like a dry slope.
Yeah, it's just outside of Auckland.
Okay.
And so I was by no means a competent skier. And then, we're at the ski field in Korea, and we're at the, the beginner area and doing a few times down, and that was fine, but yeah, I'm feeling, the hang of things.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends suggested, oh, let's move to the intermediate slopes. So I thought, yeah, I think I got this. And then so we take the ski lift up, and it just keeps going up and up and up. And I'm just like, what did I sign myself up to?
Oh my goodness. Is it because you have to ski all the way down?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we get to the top of the intermediate slope, and then I'm looking down, and it is so steep, and I was completely not prepared for. I thought intermediate would be, just a bit harder than beginner.
But it's a big gap.
Yeah, it's a huge jump.
Wow.
And so, I was.
You were panicking.
Yeah, dude, I was trembling. I was like, what is going on? So then my friends go down, and then eventually I muster up the courage to go down the slope. And you know how you have to do the whole zigzagging to reduce your speed. Yeah. So I was doing that, but then I was basically accelerating faster than I was braking. So I just kept gaining momentum, even though I was turning from side to side. And then it got to the point where I had so much momentum that I couldn't reverse the direction. So I was veering all the way to the right, basically off the cliffside. And then there's this orange wire mesh that's like the plastic stuff that kind of prevents people from literally, falling right over. So I was heading straight into it, and I thought, okay, I guess I'll just crash into it. Yeah. But then what happens is my left ski gets jammed in one of the metal poles that's holding the mesh together. And then that basically gets jammed. And so I'm basically spinning. The rest of my body is spinning one way while my foot is stuck.
Oh my goodness.
And then my knee just goes like... yeah.
You heard it? Or you felt it?
See, it's hard because everything's happening so quickly. I feel like I heard it. But I don't know if it was just like maybe some contraption or... Because the skis... one of them ejected. Okay. So it just like flew up in the sky, and then I fell back.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just on the ground for, it feels like, a good 5 to 10 minutes, just trying to process what happened. Because everything, from me going down to me being on the ground, was less than 2 minutes.
No way.
Yeah. So it was all just like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
And eventually I get up, I, take off the skis, and I try walking, but it feels a bit funny.
Yeah.
And I'm basically just holding onto the skis and kind of limping down the slope. But because I crashed so early onto the slope, there's so much left of...
Yeah.
So it felt like the longest walk in all eternity.
Goodness.
And typically what you'd do is you would call out for help, and they have this kind of snowmobile ambulance that would, pick you up and then take you to the clinic. But what happened was, kind of close to where I was, there was, I think, a 10-year-old girl who was snowboarding without a helmet.
What?
And then she fell and then hit her head on a rock.
Oh.
Yeah, so she was like bleeding profusely. And so, of course, all the attention was on her, and I don't look like that, badly hurt or anything, I'll still be
Yeah,
able
comparative, like,
yeah.
compared to her.
So, fair enough. Go tend to her. But then I'm just very slowly limping down. It's got to be at least a kilometer, I think, just down this slope. It felt, yeah. And by the time I got down, the clinic had closed for the night. So I had to wait until the next morning to go visit. And, that's fine. I tried showering, but I don't know, that's when it started really hurting.
Oh, gosh.
And generally what happens when you tear your ACL is your knee swells a lot. It can get as big as a bowling ball, pretty much. But it's the fact that I was skiing, and it's basically like having a permanent ice pack around you, because you're just constantly next to the snow. So the swelling was minimized a lot.
That's great.
Yeah. But, yeah, let's just say the next morning
It was not so good.
it hurt a lot, and I go to the clinic, and then the nurse there kind of checks me out. Thankfully, like my high school friend who's Korean was able to translate and everything, but they basically said you should probably get it checked out when you're back in New Zealand, but for now it looks like it's just a sprain, so you should be back to normal pretty soon. But they gave me not a full cast, but half of a cast that they put on the back of my leg, and then some elastic bands just to tie it up. And so I had that for the following 3 days. So the remainder of
the trip.
the time, before
So it's towards the end of your trip.
Yeah. So
good.
thankfully I got like the bulk of the
Yeah.
activities done, so it wasn't too bad.
Goodness me.
But yeah, so eventually make it back to New Zealand, and at that point the pain had completely subsided, and I thought, okay, so yeah, it probably was just a sprain, and I could walk fine and everything. So I thought, yeah, just don't have to go see anyone, and it's fine. And then fast forward a couple weeks, and I'm at this camp, and I'm playing basketball with a few of the other people at the camp, and I remember because I was defending the rim against some guy, and I had a feeling that he would kind of like fake one way and then pivot the other way. So okay, I'm just going to pivot myself to match him. But then as soon as I tried pivoting on my leg, it just gave way.
Oh my God.
And then in the blink of an eye, I'm like back on the ground and stunned, because I didn't really
It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I didn't really know what happened, because I've never felt that sensation before of just your leg not having any sort of stability. And so, yeah, I mean, all the guys kind of crowd around me, and they're like, yo, bro, you okay? And, yeah, I think so. I don't really know what happened. And then one of the guys who had recently recovered from an ACL injury, he just looked at me and he said, bro, you should go see someone. I think you might have ruptured your ACL. And I thought, oh, damn, all right. So I go to the GP, and then my GP refers me to an orthopedic specialist. And then we get an MRI done, and then the scans come back and say, your ACL is no longer there.
Oh, so, completely gone.
Yeah. So
oh my goodness.
So then, scheduled an operation, and basically it's so this guy here,
oh my gosh.
So they basically take a tendon from the side of the knee, and then using keyhole surgery, they attach the tendon where the ligament used to be.
Right.
And then you just have to go through physio to rehab it. And that usually takes up to half a year. So you're in crutches for a couple of weeks, and then you start being able to walk fine after that.
Okay.
But
to build it back up to sport level, and that takes 6 months.
And it'll never be 100%.
Oh.
Yeah. So
gosh.
There's always this kind of thing at the back of my mind where you're a bit more apprehensive of doing things that are too extreme. Yeah. Like there were times when I got invited to go, say, trampolining. And I thought, I'm good.
My new ACL, I can't handle that.
Yeah. Because the thing about ACL injuries is you are fine walking. So stuff that's linear,
Oh, right.
does not use your ACL. So you can actually live your life perfectly fine without one. But it's only when you're doing sports and things where there's a lot of like pivoting motions, that's when the ACL is engaged. And that's when, if you don't have one, then your knee...
Doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work as it should. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's why they say, like, with the gymnasts, if they have an ACL injury, it's career-ending, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And they do so much twists and turns.
Yeah, exactly.
You think, wow, that one split second, your career's over. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Scary.
So you basically had, like, a year of, like, recovery.
Yeah, I was just out of...
And that was 20...
That was the end of... That was the end of 2014.
2014?
So, yeah, so instead of going to Hong Kong, I was in Korea.
That was so long ago.
Yeah.
So you must have been... You must have been 20?
No.
I was 19.
19.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So that was my first and currently only major operation. And first time going under general anesthetic.
Oh, wow.
Which...
It's a bit scary.
Have you guys had it?
No.
Oh.
You have?
Oh, you have.
For a really worst reason.
Oh, yeah.
I had a star in my eye. I think because I inherited from my dad.
Yeah.
And it was when I was quite... How old was I? Like 10, 11?
Oh.
I was very young.
Yeah.
I kept getting, like, infected eyelids. Like, when just sty happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was one sty that was so stubborn that it needed an operation.
Oh.
It was a very quick one. And they said... You can either, like, you don't need general anesthetic for it. They'll just, like, flip your eyelid and take it out.
Yeah.
But I was such a wuss. I was like, no, just crying my head off. They said, well, we can do it under general anesthetic as well, but it'll cost 900 Hong Kong dollars more. But I wasn't having it. I was like, I need general anesthetic. So my parents
Give me the good stuff.
paid for it. So that's when I went under. So it wasn't anything major. It was just, I was a wuss, basically. But yeah, I haven't, like, done no injuries, nothing major, but I think Alice has.
I did, I had an avulsion fracture.
What's
This
that?
was like so it was on my hip, and this was the last year of school, so it was 2013, 2014.
Okay.
Sports day.
And I was in the relay race. And I was like the third person, and I got handed the baton and then started running. And it was like within like the third stride, my left leg, is when it went up, I could feel there's like, it felt like a rubber band had just like snapped off in my hip. And then I was like, oh, it's a bit weird, but I could still lift my leg, so I kept running. And I managed to get to the last person.
Pass off the baton.
But I felt I got slower and slower.
Right.
But I was like, oh my god, I need to get to the last person. So I did. And then I was like, oh, what's that? And then the moment I stopped, I was like, something's wrong. Then I started walking, and then I just couldn't lift my left leg up, and I was like, oh, I think I'm in trouble here. So I got to the nurse's station, and I was in so much pain by that time. And they got me onto the bed, and it was really difficult because I actually couldn't lift my left leg up. And I was like, something's like, I was like, I don't know if it's a fracture, because I didn't fall, there was no trauma. Like, it just felt really weird. And she was like, oh, it's a sprain, but I was like, I couldn't even lift my leg. So they took me to the hospital, and they x-rayed me, and they found that it was basically my thigh muscle. It's attached to your hip, but it contracted during the sprint so hard that it pulled out a piece of bone from where it was attached.
Whoa.
Yeah. Hence why I couldn't lift my leg.
Right.
So yeah, because it was so powerful, and at the age that I was like, what, 16, 17? He said it's because it's in the growth plate part of my hip, so still like not fully bone. And that's why it was weaker. So that's why, like, the combination of both the force and the weaker bit of the bone just like ripped out the bone. Yeah.
It's funny though, because they were saying this only really happens to like professional athletes because they have that power when they lift off their leg.
I had so much power in my thigh. Lifting up. Yeah.
That was a stressful day.
That was so stressful. That was my first time in hospital.
And I was freaking out because they were like, Amy, you need to go to the nurse's station. Because Alice has injured herself. And the nurse didn't believe Alice. She just thought that it was a very minor sprain. And she wouldn't call the ambulance or anything. And I was like, I just can't move. And she was
They tried to stand me up, and I was like, I actually couldn't weight bear on my left leg. And I was like, I can't even lift it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got into ambulance, got to the hospital, and we obviously hadn't done that before.
Yeah.
They're like, can we have your ID cards? And we're like, we don't have our ID cards.
We just came from sports day.
We don't carry it on us.
It was in my sports uniform.
Were they just expecting you to be like, oh yeah, here you go?
Yeah, exactly. They just think that. But I guess they need it for registration.
And then we had to call our parents, but they were at work, so we couldn't get hold of them, and it was just very stressful. We didn't have any phone. We had I had an old Nokia.
Oh, the brick phone.
Yeah, brick phone, because our parents didn't give us an iPhone or Android until we graduated. So I had a really old phone to call our parents on. They weren't answering. Kept calling. It was very stressful because you had to wait in the bed. It was a good 4 or 5 hours to wait for a bed. It was very cramped.
I don't remember much of the wait, to be honest. I think I was in so much pain.
And you were so desperate for the toilet as well.
I needed to piss. I needed the piss because I hadn't pissed. So, sorry.
It's all good.
I was so desperate.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you can't use a toilet. And I was like, oh, did I actually use one in the end?
No, I think they gave you a bedpan.
Oh my god, I hated that so much.
No.
Because all the beds were waiting in line to get, all the, what do they call them?
Stretchers.
The stretchers.
Yeah. Stretcher.
They were all waiting in line to get a bed, basically,
Right.
in the hospital in A&E, and it was just insane. There were all these elderly people in front of us.
Yeah.
You were the only young person there.
Yeah.
I was definitely the odd one out.
Yeah.
But they decided not to operate because the doctor looked at the X-ray and he was like, it's not the avulsion, the gap. He said is not significant enough for them to warrant. They just think if they gave it a few days, the bow would grow in between the two and start to fuse it again.
Right.
So he said, we'll keep you in for a couple of days and then you start some physio, which is what happened basically. So so I stayed in hospital for a few days next to some old ladies. Couldn't really speak much. Well, I mean, I could speak a little bit. And the nurses loved me because it was one less old lady to look after. And I was like, just leave me alone. I was like, they were like, do you need help with the bedpan? I'm like, no, I'll do it myself.
And strong and independent.
Yeah, I was like, don't come in here. But yeah, after a couple of days, they got me into physio and then onto crutches, and then I was like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was almost gonna have surgery, but glad I didn't.
So it just healed over it, how they said.
Yeah, it was a week, and then I was basically able to start lifting my leg again, did some physio, and then it was kind of a year because I did physio after discharge, and they did actually some electrical stuff on my leg. These sponge things they put on my leg, and then just did some physio on there. And then back to normal again. So it wasn't the worst. Yeah. But that was the only fracture.
I know you were just very bored at the hospital.
Yeah.
I was so
You were
bored.
dying to get some homework.
I was so bored.
I remember bringing your laptop and your NDS.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just for some entertainment.
Yeah,
Because there's nothing else to do there. And you couldn't even see out because there was no windows
Yeah.
outside.
I remember the lady next to me had both her legs casted, and she told me that she fell down the stairs and broke both her feet.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was bad. And then the lady opposite me, I think she fractured her spine. So she was in bed on traction the whole time. She was just lying straight. And bless her, she couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So all of them were immobile, including me, until I got onto the crutches, and I was like, I can use the toilet.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy when you think about it. You're when you stop, you're not able to access your basic needs, going to the toilet, having a shower.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't allowed to have a shower, and I was like, I've just come from sports day. It's so hot and sweaty, and they didn't let me have a shower. I was like, I feel so gross. So when I finally went home, I was like, the first thing I wanted to do was take a shower.
Yeah.
It's like, get me in the shower.
And the crutches didn't even last that long. You barely even used them.
I hated the crutches.
She was just hopping away. She's
Oh,
like, no,
yeah.
I'm not using it.
Yeah, I hated the crutches. Don't need the crutches. They slow me down. I'm sure you probably felt like that as well. You
Yeah.
had crutches. You're like, get me out of
For
these
sure.
crutches.
Yeah. I dropped them as soon as I could.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Surprising how some people don't want to drop the crutches. Like, loads of people don't want
Really?
to drop crutches.
Just
Yeah.
attention seeking.
That's just, yeah, that's probably part of that, yeah.
Pity me.
Yeah, pity me.
Probably worse with the wheelchair. You'd want to stay in a wheelchair
Oh.
for a bit longer
Yeah.
than you're used to.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Gosh.
Those are our injury stories.
Nothing major. Yeah.
So with, like, growing up, were you guys born in Hong Kong? Or,
Yeah,
You
we
were-
were. We were
yeah.
born in Canossa
yeah.
Hospital.
I don't know where that is, to be honest. Is it?
Yeah, I actually have no idea.
We just know it was there, and we had a nun that helped.
No,
As a
we had a
midwife.
sister. Yeah, she,
Oh, yeah.
is that a sister or a nun? It's
Yeah,
a nun,
yeah, it's the same,
it's
yeah.
a nun. She was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was really nice. Yeah, we were born there,
Mm-hmm.
and then we grew up there for 18 years.
Yeah, so how was life growing up in Hong Kong?
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very sheltered.
Mm.
It was like enforced shelter. I think it's what, you know, you probably could relate to some extent.
Yeah.
Like, Hong Kong in itself is a very controlled society.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are freedoms and also no freedoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some
Restrictions.
Yeah, restrictions,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, you know, children, they're not allowed, you know, not like in the UK where when you're like young or you're teenagers, you can just work in your local shop or something. That just doesn't happen in Hong Kong.
Right.
So like you're kind of dependent on your parents for a lot of things like money and like going out by yourself.
Yeah.
But I guess like growing up was, as Amy says, very sheltered. You know, you go to school, you learn, you have friends,
Yeah.
you go to parties, you like, you know, have little sleepovers. But everyone's very studious, obviously. Like
Yeah.
academically, it was very like important to focus on all that.
Yeah, life is very linear there.
Right.
Because you don't really see any other options. You like, go to school, get the grades, go to university, get a job.
Yeah, there's always in like
Yeah.
the back of your mind.
And you don't know what the other options are.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't. There's no exposure to it. Like, what do you do if you fail school? There was no talk about that. So, and I guess here it's different because there are options out there.
Yeah.
And the expectations are very different.
Right.
So yeah, I think you just kind of grow up with
Yeah.
like unknown pressure.
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. But then, like, at the same time, like, Hong Kong being so, like, densely, like, interesting because it's got such a big variety. Where we lived was in, like, a really quiet area, but surrounded by, like, really busy areas. Like, it was near Mong Kok,
Yeah.
Sham Shui Po. We just would, like, that would be our neighbourhood that we would, like, on the weekends, we would go out together and we go, you know, go to like the flower markets.
Yeah.
We go to Mong Kok markets. Like we just go shopping or just like walking around and just like take everything in,
Yeah.
which is always so nice because it was like very safe.
Yeah.
To do that.
Right.
And yeah, so we kind of like got really immersed in that whole area, and obviously our grandma loves the area too.
Yeah.
Go dim sum every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd have their routine, our grandparents. Yeah. Yum cha.
Yum cha, then go to the market, buy the food to cook,
Yeah.
get on the bus, come back, cook the food, we come back.
Yeah.
We always get snacks.
Yeah, we're so lucky with the
We're so
snacks.
lucky.
We like bao. She'd be like, "What would you like?" You know, I've got all these different things like
Oh, the mango pudding.
mango pudding.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, the pancake with like the cream and the mangoes inside, and they roll it up.
Oh
and it's
yeah.
so good.
Don't know what
Oh,
that's
so
called,
good.
but it was
Is it
amazing.
It's not just mango pancake? Or...
Yeah,
Yes,
it must
yeah.
be mango
Yeah.
pancake, but like made it into like a Swiss roll kind of like shape, and
Right,
they roll it
yeah.
up with
Yeah.
sponge.
Just so good.
Yeah, that was amazing. Just anything, or like chong fan.
Chong fan, yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
so good. Yeah, definitely the food was such a.
Highlight.
And the tofu farm man
Yeah.
that came
Oh,
round on his
yeah.
bike.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, to your place?
He just around the streets,
Oh, yeah.
just locally. He had his bike and
His
just
old bike.
shout. What did he shout?
I think just a tofu fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had this big vat on the back of his bike,
Wow.
obviously covered.
Yeah.
And then you'd shout down from your balcony or wherever you
Oh,
are and say,
wow.
I want one.
Yeah.
And then you'd run down and he'd like scoop you.
The
into-
best
Yeah.
tofu fan.
And then
Whoa.
give you like a pack of like red sugar as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
He'd come
drugs.
up and you'd have it fresh.
That's the good stuff.
Good stuff.
Like, we need that.
I need my fix now.
He was literally
shaking.
he was literally like our version of the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you'd shout
Yeah.
out for it and he'd have his own song,
Yeah.
Yeah.
his voice. But yeah, it was just
Yeah.
like, he's here.
That's old school.
It's
Old
really
school.
old school. I
You wouldn't
actually
get that
forgot about
nowadays. He's
Mm.
probably sadly
Oh.
passed away.
That actually makes me feel really
Quite
sad.
old.
Yeah, you won't see that very much anymore.
No.
Yeah, there's
Like-
a huge cultural shift in Hong Kong
Yeah.
now. So.
I guess when we go back, it'll be so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must be. Because all the old vendors we used to love, you know, the Dragon Beards candy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we used to walk around and they'd be like unicorns.
Yeah.
And like you just walk around and then one day you just see one just like setting up on like the street corner or somewhere. You're like, I need to get that.
Or on an overpass somewhere.
Yeah.
Outside the MTR.
It's always in the
station.
Kowloon Tong MTR station.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice
yeah.
little walk.
Yeah.
And you go down the ramp and he's there at the end and you're just
Yeah.
like, yes, it's a great day today. So good.
Or getting like a tea egg from
Oh,
7-Eleven.
Oh, I love tea.
oh, just so good.
They were the best. Yeah, that was definitely like some highlights in like the whole like growing up was just being able to like just step out the house and like into like, you know, the, like Hong Kong, like the bit that you don't see very much, that people think of.
Yeah.
But like the real Hong Kong, and just being able to like, you know, navigate your way like through like very naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though there weren't that many like Western looking people in the area, or who would go into like Mongkok and stuff, unless they were tourists.
Right.
But it was like a daily thing for us, or like a weekly thing. We'd go there every weekend,
Yeah.
so we would know some of the vendors. And
Yeah.
like, we just knew it so well. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, very easy life.
Yeah.
For
And
us.
also not that easy in some ways. There's obviously lots of pressures, as we all have,
Yeah.
growing up. Because it was like there is that cultural, like,
Expectation.
expectation, and like you're like even though we grew up there, we're still treated as foreigners.
Right.
You don't feel like a total local.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to like give context to the listeners?
I guess.
Yeah.
As in,
Yeah.
our dad's
Background.
English,
Yeah.
and our mum is Malaysian Chinese.
Yeah.
And they met in Hong Kong, and then they had us. So so we're mixed race. Yeah. So, but we when we were younger, we had quite light hair, but now it's a bit darker.
Yeah.
So, and we're quite fair. So, a lot of locals wouldn't think that we're mixed. But we were like so we actually knew more Cantonese back then, obviously, because we would use
Use it
You're
frequently.
immersed in it, yeah.
we call it our market level Cantonese.
Yeah. Okay,
I like that.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Guy.
We would get by on like transactional like purchases
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like ordering food and stuff.
Yeah, defo.
Yeah, or like getting in a taxi. But that was the thing.
Oh yeah.
The taxi.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would like so up until a certain age in secondary school, we stopped using the school bus. Because it was just getting a bit expensive, and we had a few other friends who lived nearby who were in our year group, and we'll just pool money together and take a taxi every morning to get to school.
Because it was cheaper than the school bus, weirdly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And quicker as well.
Yeah.
And our school bus had no aircon. It was like the oldest bus.
There was no seatbelts on it,
Yeah.
which is a rickety old, like, 90s bus.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it was illegal.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely illegal. It should not have been on the road.
Yeah. And we used to get bribed with lemon tea
Yeah.
by the bus driver
Oh, yeah.
for not reporting the fact that it was probably illegal to drive that bus for us.
Yeah.
It was
So,
so
yeah.
slow as well. It'd be like overtaken like the whole way back home.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was awful.
There was literally a bench in it.
Yeah, there was a bench on the
Bench.
side.
Oh.
It was like, you know, like it's just such an old bus. You just have like normal ones, and then on the side just like one long bench,
Yeah.
and no one was strapped in seatbelts, and like this bus would just like I don't know, tilt and like just had no suspension whatsoever.
Probably
Right.
went at like 20 miles per hour max.
Oh.
That was the safety like feature really. So yeah, we were like, scrap the bus,
Yeah.
we'll get the taxi.
See?
But what we didn't realise was how hard it was to get a taxi when you look like a foreigner, even though you're in school uniform.
Right.
So we would,
So two of, yeah, you.
No, you go.
Yeah.
Our two, like, friends were Chinese.
Yeah.
Well, one's Canto, and the other one is Shanghainese. Well, his
Yeah.
parents are Shanghainese,
Right.
but he only speaks English
And Mandarin.
and Mandarin.
Oh, okay.
So what we would do is, when we would wait outside this corner where Welcome and 7-Eleven was.
Yeah.
But in order to get a taxi, we would hide. We would like step further back, and our friends would be the ones calling out for the taxi.
Yeah.
So it would actually stop for them, and then we'd all pile on. And if our Cantonese friend wasn't there,
Yeah.
me and Alice would have to tell the directions to the driver in Cantonese, because the Shanghainese boy didn't know how to talk in Cantonese.
Oh, okay.
So he would sit at the front, and the driver would look at him,
Yeah.
and then we'd be the ones talking.
Yeah.
And they'd be really shocked at the fact that we'd tell them where we had to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I remember having like so many conversations with taxi drivers because some of them were actually really friendly. Like
Yeah.
once they like started talking to us because they were like, "Oh, you guys go to international school." We went to like a British school, which was quite common. Like it's different from like an international school because it was like partly locals. It would, yeah, I don't know how it worked, but it was called the English School Foundation. So they had multiple schools across Hong Kong, and it'd be a bit more embedded into Hong Kong, but it wasn't a local school.
Right.
We followed the English curriculum.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It wasn't like the German international school, like the Swiss international school, Japanese international school.
Yeah.
They were more, I guess, prestigious. I don't know. But anyway, so these taxi drivers were always really interested, and they would always ask us about the school because the concept of, or like the stereotype for locals is obviously, you know, if you go to international school, you're brats and you're like, you know, you're rich. I mean, a
pompous.
Pompous, yeah. So like, obviously, there's a hatred towards, and there is obviously some valid reasons for it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, local schools are very much like, you know, very strict and like people very studious and yeah. So there would be a lot of like that presumption in discussions, but it was quite nice because they got to know us and we'd have like really good like discussions about like ourselves, which is quite good. But definitely that was a tricky thing, was trying to get a taxi because they just wouldn't want to pick us up.
Yeah. They profile you.
Yeah. Exactly. They just profiled us,
Yeah.
but they didn't realise we spoke some Cantonese.
Yeah.
And we could still have a conversation with them.
Mm.
But yeah, it was so funny. They just wouldn't expect us speaking in Cantonese, especially when we have like someone who's Chinese with us.
Yeah.
So they'd just be like double taking, like,
Yeah.
what? What's happening here? And we were like, to our friend, we're like, how have you not learned Cantonese? Like, you are Chinese.
And he's one of the smartest boys in the year group.
Right.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
just never picked up Cantonese.
Wow.
Ever.
Do you say why?
I don't know. I think he just didn't want to learn it, or didn't feel the need to pick it up, or was never really in situations where he felt like he
was
needed.
necessary.
Yeah,
Right.
because I think obviously in Hong Kong you can get by just speaking English a lot of the time. But we don't actually know the real reason why.
Maybe his parents just spoke for him, and you know, we never had any reason to speak it day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, but it kind of helped us.
Yeah.
Because we were forced to learn. We did go to local kindergarten though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And weirdly
That
enough,
was tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
it was like,
Got homework.
Wow, in kindergarten.
it was traumatizing.
Yeah.
We hated it.
Yeah.
I remember getting, they don't call it detention, but you get shamed. So if you do something wrong during the day,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's assembly where everyone comes together. And if you have done something bad, you get lined up at the front of the assembly hall, basically, and they say out loud what you've done.
Wow.
And you basically stand there in shame. And I remember one time, there were several times where we definitely got shamed. There was one time I did homework, and I was just copying characters onto a piece of worksheet.
Yeah.
I folded this paper in half. I took out my bag, and the teacher screamed at me, and basically, because I had crumpled it, or made a crease in it, she's like, it needs to be flat and straight.
Wow.
So, yeah, I got berated for that, and that was one reason. The other reason was...
Toilet. If you don't go to toilet when they ask you to go toilet, and you ask again later, saying you're desperate, they will tell you off, and
it was a big thing. It's like the worst thing you could do.
So, like, even if you didn't need to go to toilet, you still had to try and go when they said you should go. Yeah.
Because then they'll be like, why didn't you go earlier when we said you could?
Yeah.
And you're like, but I didn't feel desperate back then.
Yeah, it was like, there were some good bits, but we definitely remembered, like, how much
traumatizing
punishment they put in for, like, the smallest thing.
Yeah.
And they would, like, we were fluent in Cantonese because it was, like, local, so they would only speak Cantonese.
Right.
Like, you're 3 or 4 years old and you absorb everything then.
Yeah. But they would stand us in front of assembly with, obviously, other kids, and that we wouldn't be allowed to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful.
Brutal.
It was really brutal.
Whoa.
And there were days where we would actually skive kindergarten.
Really?
Yeah, because our grandparents looked after us. They actually brought us up pretty much until we were like, well, old enough to go to school ourselves. So most of kindergarten and primary school. So they'd walk us to kindergarten, which was only down the road really. And there was like a few parks near, like tiny little gardens. And we would be like crying because we didn't want to go. And our grandparents felt so bad for us that they were like, okay, you don't have to go. And they just take us to a little garden.
Really?
And we'd just be playing in there. In our school, in our like nursery uniform. It's so funny.
And we got told on because the drivers used to park around, like the drivers of the people that, of the
bus drivers.
Yeah, the bus drivers used to park around the area, and they used to tell on us.
Because they could see us in our uniform.
And they
and they were like, we see 2 kids playing in the playground and they're not in kindergarten.
Whoa, you got snitched on.
We got snitched on by the bus drivers.
Like, there are 2 blonde kids over there. What? And like, there's no other blonde kids in the school. So that had to be us 2.
We're like the most recognisable kids ever. Because we're twins as well. So, same haircut.
The bowl cut.
Yeah, the bowl.
We all had it. Yeah, but our parents didn't care. They were like,
they're pretty chill about it.
They're like, okay, it's fine. You sky, it's fine. Like, I swear we must have skipped like at least a day a week of kindergarten.
Wow.
And how long did we do kindergarten for?
I think it was 2 years.
Was it 2 years? Oh,
it would have been 3, but because English kindergarten, English primary school starts a year earlier, so you have to be 5 when you start, and then in Cantonese schools you have to be 6, so you do an extra year. So we left early to go to English school, basically. But I think our parents wanted us to go to local school, but we weren't accepted because neither of our parents spoke Cantonese. So by default, they were like, you can't help them with homework, and therefore they'll pull our grades down, the general like grades, because they're very obviously they want the best grades.
Results driven.
Results. So we were rejected from that. So.
And also because you had to sign up to a church. A lot of the local schools. I remember our mum was saying.
Yes.
Real religious.
Yeah, so you had to be a Christian and you had to sign up to a church. Sign up. I don't know really what the process of that was. Like joining a gym.
Yeah, all the good Cantonese schools were attached to like a church.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting.
So in a way, it's kind of good we ended up in an English school because we actually wouldn't have survived.
And we had a culture shock when we went to primary school.
Oh yeah.
We're like, it's play every day. We had sand play, water play. There's no homework.
No one got in trouble.
No one got in trouble. It was just play all day. And we're like, what is this paradise?
Yeah. We were still crying a lot though.
We were scared
like,
by everything.
Yeah, we were. I think we must have been like, because our like personalities anyway were quite sensitive, and just being traumatized in like a
school environment.
We were already like extra sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So we would cry at the smallest things, even in like year 1.
Mm-hmm.
We just cry at the smallest things. That got better over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think once we got into primary school, we were fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a lot more fun, and we were like, yay! We don't have to do homework,
Right.
so yeah, it was a lot nicer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, school was like probably not the best thing of growing up, but like living in Hong Kong was actually really nice.
Yeah.
And just even the location of Hong Kong, because we could go, we could fly back to Malaysia and see our grandparents. That was probably later in life, when we were like a bit older, or like just go to China, or
it's a very compact city. Like within an hour and a half, you can reach one end to the other very easily, and you can do so many things. You can go hiking, you can go to the beach. Everything's so accessible.
Yeah.
And you take it for granted that you can take public transport everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so cheap and
reliable.
Yeah, you can go to the city, or you can go somewhere quite rural with waterfalls and beaches, which are amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just don't realise how lucky you are, I guess, to live in such a nice place.
yeah.
And compared to here.
Even though we do like it here.
We do like it here. I think there's just differences in terms of efficiency and how the distance between things and getting there as well. But yeah.
I guess that's one thing I wanted to ask was, when you guys first moved over here, what were the challenges you guys faced in terms of adjusting?
It was a culture shock, for sure. Culture shock.
Yeah.
Because we...
Even though we've been here to visit, like, family, our dad's side, you don't really get, like, a full picture of what it is like to live here.
Yeah, you don't
get,
understand.
like, you get the main, like, gist of... Yeah, like, people have tea, people drink.
Yeah, a lot of tea.
You get a Sunday roast.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we just never got the cultural references.
Yeah.
And we had to learn that.
And the language, the lingo.
Yeah, the different accents and like all the stereotypes that people have built, like in terms of how they like, we found out that like people have like stereotypes of the south of England, London, and the north of England, northeast, northwest, Scotland. All of those, like you've got Geordies in the northeast, and then you've got the Yorkshire men, women, like
and
a
the
bit further
north-south divide.
Yeah, all of those, like all the cultural references are like so ingrained in them, and because we looked English in a way, like we didn't look too foreign to a lot of our like uni like peers.
Yeah.
They just expected us to know that kind of stuff because it's not like we wouldn't, we just looked like we just knew.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just not knowing that kind of stuff and then having to pick it up very quickly was like quite intense.
Right.
And so it was very
and Freshers Week as well, like because we hadn't drunk before properly. People start drinking here at a very young age, like 13, 14, so they're quite used to it, whereas we weren't really allowed to do that, and we had only just turned 18 that very month. So yeah, that was eye-opening, like, having pre-drinks, and then going out to the club, and then, having kebab afterwards, or McDonald's, and then coming back and being hungover.
Yeah.
That was like a very different experience to what we used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting at the same time. And then having to balance being serious at university. Like, you're studying at the same time, but you're also having fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you need to, like, know your boundaries without having an adult there to tell you what the boundaries are. It's kind of free.
Yeah. Because we went from, like a place where we were, like, everything was quite structured.
Yeah.
And, like, even though we were free to walk around and like shop and do this and that, I mean the social aspect of like growing up that wasn't as intense as it is here. So like having
very
conversations,
PG.
yeah, having conversations with like our uni friends like early on was quite difficult because you're just like you're kind of trying to learn the language.
You don't get references like from the TV shows and like politics.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah, it's different.
It's all the small stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "Oh, you're right," because like we're used to it now. It's like everyone here says, "Oh, you're right," and you're meant to say good. Like, yeah.
The small talk.
You know, it's like very normal. It's a greeting.
Yeah.
You know, just all the small little bits we just had to adjust to. But I think we picked up a lot already.
Now it's natural for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Theo says, he's like, I can't believe like you spent the majority of your life so far in a completely different place.
Yeah.
He's like, I just can't imagine it.
Pretty much the other side of the world.
Yeah. It's just so different. He's like, there's like a whole side of you that I don't know. And it's true because like we now blend in quite nicely. And in London we feel, I don't know about you, Amy, but London especially is so multicultural compared to other parts of England. When you leave London, you do feel a bit alien because it's very like English, it's very white.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're in London, it's very international and like it does feel very homely in that way. It just, you know, they're just such a mix of people.
We feel comfortable here.
Yeah, everyone's very tolerant of each other, very like accepting of each other. Like everyone's mingling and, you know, the moment you leave London, it does feel different. You might experience this when you go out of London.
Yeah.
People are still very friendly. I think the North is so friendly as well.
Yeah.
So and Scotland too.
Yeah.
It is. It's so interesting. It's really interesting. But we do love it here. It feels like, I don't know.
It feels like home.
It also it definitely feels home to us.
Yeah.
We got many homes.
Right.
But this feels like more of a permanent one.
Yeah. I'm sure you probably feel the same. You've got like probably different like cultural identities, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like you kind of having to like balance all of them or like adjust depending on where you are. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, well, because we've never actually talked about racial stuff before. Yeah. So me growing up, since I was in a pretty affluent region in Auckland, a lot of my schoolmates, well, almost all of them were white. And it was like, there's a handful of Asian people in my primary school, but a lot of these kids, you know, because they're well off, they've, you know, traveled and they eat sushi and they're very tolerant people. And so I remember there was a cultural night one time and we were learning about, you know, the foods of other countries, and then I just kept getting asked by my classmates about, so what do you eat? And then there's like feng zhao, so like the chicken feet, and they're like, whoa, you eat chicken feet, like that's cool. And but then if you're in, say, like a less well-off part of Auckland, then their reaction could be completely different. And so I only kind of noticed that later on, living in Auckland, that there were a lot of people that really struggled with being, you know, Kiwi Asian or you know, Kiwi Chinese, because they would get bullied incessantly. And so I was like very privileged, you know, so I was kind of like in my own little glass dome. Whereas these guys were getting abused like
all the time.
Very regularly, and they would basically hate the fact that they were Asian because of all this abuse that they were receiving. So I was like super sheltered from all of this, and only later on was I actually kind of
exposed to
it. Just from like other people's stories of being from the other parts of Auckland that are more, there's just more racism involved.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that.
Yeah.
It definitely would, it is like, wherever you go, where you're the minority, it's like, you do stand out, and people do notice it.
Yeah.
And even like, I remember when I went to university, it was up north, so like very white area, and it was me and my two housemates, my two friends, and it's me, and one of them she's Japanese, and we did experience like what we felt like was racial like abuse when we're out in public, because we would get like shouted at by like people in like, you know, like local workers, like council workers. They like scream and try and scare you, but you knew you were targeted for a reason. And like people would throw like stones and rocks at one time. Really? It was only on 2 occasions I got screamed at one time, and it was daytime, just screamed at, and it happened to my friend as well. And another friend who's mixed, and she looks a lot more Asian, and we just knew like you just know sometimes you don't even need to know, you don't even need like anyone to say anything, like when someone targets you like that, you kind of just know it's like there's a racial undertone there, but that was like the only time really experiencing it. Actually no, there was a time we went to Norwich with the girls, so Hannah and Lani, and we're all mixed. And this was like during the time of COVID, like early COVID, when we were out of lockdown. They were like the first
2021, 2022, I think. And
again, it's another really white area, or just like not so like well traveled, not international. There's just less international people there. And people would be coughing at us, like coughing, like like, but you knew it wasn't a sick cough. They were coughing to you. So that was another example of, oh my gosh, it does happen. But it's just something that we've noticed.
See, when I was in Melbourne, and it was again in that whole crazy era, so I went to the markets to buy some groceries, and then I'm crossing the road, and then there's this, you know, oldish white man in his, I think, 60s probably, and he just straight up looks at me and says, "Go back to China."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just no hesitation at all, just burst out. And he was saying it to basically every Asian person that passed his way, and like some of them were Korean, or some of them, like they weren't even Chinese people, and I don't know. It's, so it happens everywhere.
It does, It's interesting because it's like we get like in London, it's so nice because you don't you feel very safe in that aspect. I guess I wouldn't say that for many minorities, to be fair, in London. You know, I think being Chinese or Asian, not necessarily Southeast Asian or like Muslim, well, anyone from Muslim countries, but I think if you're Chinese, it's like on the more tolerable or acceptable side.
Yeah, because they call it model minority, right?
Yeah.
So you don't make waves, and you're just kind of doing your own thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't get targeted so much, but like there's generally like a lot more like interest in like everyone's just so much more tuned to like people from different countries. Like we've had people guess where we're from, and like they're usually quite accurate.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think like, I mean, they're actually mostly non-white people who would guess correctly.
Right.
They would notice straight up that we were mixed.
Yeah.
And they would be like, "Oh, you're half English and half like something.
What is it?"
And they're like, "We know it's somewhere like somewhere."
Whoa.
And someone even said Malaysia once. I was like, "Oh my goodness, like, how would you guess that?" But they're just so much more like, they recognise that. But it's very common that like I've noticed in my interactions at work, and like I always like to a lot of like white people be considered they'd either see me as fully white or fully Asian. They wouldn't ever think I was mixed.
Really?
Yeah, very interesting. Like, I had lots of comments. I don't know about you.
Yeah, definitely. It's either one or the other. It's almost like it doesn't compute in their brains. Like
it's
you
binary.
look more, you look more of this side than this side, but they still like they get that you're mixed, but like you look more of this side than this side.
Yeah.
But I think we got that when we were growing up, but we didn't realize it because it was more of an undertone, like a nuanced one. Because when we were younger, and people would, like our parents' friends would say, "Oh, you look more like your dad," or "You look more like your mum." we didn't know what that meant. We didn't think it was a racial thing.
Yeah, there was an implication there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were too young to understand that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now thinking back, I'm like, oh, I realised what they're saying. I was like, oh, they didn't actually mean like, I look.
You
like,
physically look.
Yeah. It's such an interesting
Yeah.
thing to remember.
Right.
Oh, wow, actually.
Because people, when we were growing up, when we'd be out with just our mum, our mum would get asked if she was our helper.
Like our nanny. Like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, just the nanny. My mum would be like, I think she thought it was funny, but I wouldn't think it's funny.
Yeah.
I think when it happened after more than like a few times, it was just like, okay, this is not funny. This is like,
Yeah.
I'm their mum.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these are my children. And people actually wouldn't believe her. She'd be like, yeah, these are my children. You're like, no, they're not. You're the helper.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be their mum? And she's like, yeah, they're mine.
It must be difficult, like, knowing how to react to that and say, well, this is the truth, but people aren't going to believe it because they don't really see that very often.
Yeah.
And it's so common for like our friends who are mixed because they say the same thing, that their mum would get mistaken as their helper. And yeah, it's just, I guess people's perceptions are so guided by like
very binary.
It's interesting. Well, I guess it's like, okay, it's just people just not being aware of certain things.
Ignorance.
Ignorance, and like, okay, maybe they don't mean it in a bad way, but in a way they
I think here, like, for me personally, working, I get asked more about where I'm from because of my accent rather than the way I look. They'll be like, Miss, you sound either American or Irish or Scottish.
Yeah.
I get those three. But I try and get them to guess first because I'm like, I wonder what they think.
Okay.
They're like, where are you from? You sound different.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, have a guess. Like, where do you think?
Yeah.
And they'll go like in this order, America, or they go down to Australia as well.
Really?
Then Scotland and Ireland. I get all four. It's really weird.
It's a mix.
But yeah, when I ask my colleagues like what accent do I have, they say it changes depending on the words that I say.
Yeah.
Like it's received pronunciation, like it's kind of proper-ish English.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still a mix of that transatlantic kind of mixture of American TV shows and a bit of British.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's so many accents in the UK, and like
So many.
everyone's like constantly picking up how you sound because they want to place you somewhere.
Yeah.
And like it's quite nice here because people just say as you described, like they just say, where are you from? You know, because people are genuinely like interested and they want to be like, oh, where are you from?
Because then they'll say where they're from as well. Because most of like the kids I see are from like Afro-Caribbean backgrounds. Like, oh, I'm from Ghana, or I'm from this place.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting and quite nice. It's a bit like sharing.
Yeah, everyone's very curious. Very curious. They just want to know in a nice way, not in like a judgmental way.
Right.
Yeah, it's curiosity.
Yeah.
Because even between you two, there's already a difference in speaking.
I think because of where we were at uni, because I was in the south,
Yeah.
Alice was in the north.
Yeah.
And I think the people around me in the south were a lot more like mild in their accents. So I didn't pick up as much as Alice did.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot more posh people in your
Yeah.
university.
University was very like loads of like it was known as the Oxbridge reject.
Yeah, we didn't know that. We just come in, we get plonked in, and you don't realise until now I realise each university's got their own like stereotype. Like Durham is quite,
it's very posh. Like the third choice from like Oxford and Cambridge. I didn't know that until I got there freshers week, and everyone was just asking, which one do you apply to, Oxford or Cambridge? And I was like, neither. And they're like, what? You're the first person like who hasn't.
In the history of the university.
Because most people had already applied and they would just reject us. They were like, oh, we're going. Their second choice was at Durham.
Because they can only pick one or the other, right?
Yeah,
my mom
only
told
do
me
that.
about that.
Yeah. So it's like Oxbridge, Cambridge, Oxford, Oxbridge, reject university.
Yeah, they didn't understand like the Russell University group thing. I still don't, but it's almost like Ivy League in America. But here it's called the Russell Group University.
Russell Group.
Yeah. And I think that includes Oxbridge,
Yeah.
Durham. I don't know what other ones there are.
Yeah.
UCL.
UCL.
St Andrews, I think, is on there.
Prestigious ones.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
We just picked it based on like what we could see, like, you know, rankings, university like subject
of
rankings.
the course that we wanted to do.
So we just looked at the rankings and we were like, oh, these ones look good, and then we went to see a few.
And then which ones accept international students as well.
Oh yeah, that too.
Just kind of based on all those factors.
Oh.
Yeah.
Some don't.
Some don't. For specific courses like mine,
right. Yeah.
I only had 5 to choose from.
Oh wow.
So made it easier for me.
Yeah, it was very specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting.
Yeah.
But we've been here for 10 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and half that time, more than half that time has been in London.
Yeah.
Which is, for you it's more than half. For me it's half.
6 years for me.
Yeah, and 5 for me.
And half of that is COVID, so didn't do anything.
Yeah.
True. I guess, do you guys want to go in a little bit into your work? Like, what you guys do?
Oh, yeah, you go first.
Me? I guess. So I work in a special school as a speech therapist, and it's secondary school, so 11 to 18 in South London, and it's just been really nice working in a school. In a team of therapists, which is really good because you can talk to each other and kind of bounce ideas off each other. But having that kind of freedom to, at first it was kind of scary. You're like, oh, I'm in charge of 150 children and their care and their parents and carers, and you think, wow, this is a lot of responsibility, because at university I've only had 5 cases at once, and you take a lot of time just to plan one session with them. So I was like, how am I going to manage 150 children in a week, every week? So that was definitely a learning curve, but I got a lot of good support, so it was really nice. Like the first 2 years, and then COVID hit, and it was all online, which was very interesting to change everything over to a virtual kind of setting. But it was really nice to see parents at home with their children. You can do so much more. You can train the parents to do the therapy, which you can't normally.
Right.
And it was just nice seeing them in their environment at home as well. It was a nice insight into their life, and talking to parents and seeing how tolerant they are of their children, and their expectations of their children about doing certain things.
I guess you learnt a lot about the children and why they are certain ways.
Exactly. I see why you're like that because of your parents. A lot of the parents are so understanding and so flexible, and they're really lovely to work with. Rarely, I don't think I've ever had any bad experiences with any parents and carers. And the ones that fight for their children to have more therapy, or they might be seen as kind of more difficult to deal with. They just want the best for their children. So you do understand that, and you kind of work around that with them, and you just have a very frank conversation with them, and they're always understanding. But yeah, I do like working with the kids. I prefer the teenage group, because you get more conversation out of them. You get all the banter and the cheekiness that comes with it, and you can really see the gaps in their language where you're like, okay, I know where to fill that in, or I know where to work from an independence perspective. So I'm like, okay, if they're you're 9, 10, 11, I'm working towards them getting to college in terms of, are they literate? Are they able to put a sentence together? Are they able to ask for help? That kind of thing. So you kind of know your goals for them in terms of what's going to set them up for the rest of their life. Whereas the younger ones, year 7s to year 9s, you're kind of working, filling the gaps with their grammar and vocabulary, their understanding of basic WH questions, who, what, where, when, why, and how. So you kind of, the main things to prioritize with them. Now, 6 years in, off the bat, I know exactly what to work on, their targets, whereas back then it took me a while to think of, okay, what do I need to work on? What do I need to prioritize? Now it's just a lot more quick and more fluid. I can make on-the-spot decisions. And I feel like it's a skill that I didn't realize I would get so quickly. But it's not just the actual therapy that you have to kind of deal with. It's the admin side and the pastoral care side of things, a lot of admin and paperwork that you have to write up notes for and write up their reports and things. That takes a lot more time. I've gotten better at, and doing emails and liaising with like teachers and staff and parents and external professionals.
Yeah.
I've got a lot better at as well, but it's not something that they teach you. You have to learn on the job. So yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier for me now as a therapist.
Yeah.
But I really like working in a school. You kind of have that flexibility. I'm lucky enough to work in a school where we get almost full reign of what we can do within our scope. We don't get a lot of pushback. If I want to go in training, I get paid for the training. So I'm very, very lucky. I get to decide when the kids come out of class. Obviously, we work around like the teachers. So if they have like this one, like we take them out of lessons that they have more than 2 times a week, so they don't miss out on lessons that they only have once a week.
Right.
So you kind of work around like the school environment quite a lot, and you develop more of a relationship with the staff there, and you can get a lot more therapy done in that sense, that transfer of skills. Whereas if I was to work as an NHS therapist, just dropping into the school like once every week, I wouldn't have built up the relationship.
Yeah, the rapport.
Yeah. You wouldn't get them to do as much as you normally would. And yeah, I just find that a nice model to work in. So yeah, that's technically what I do.
Yeah.
And it's your first job as well.
Yeah.
You've been in that for like...
Yeah, I think it's probably a good sign that I haven't left it yet. Yeah, I think it's a good sign.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of staff haven't left that school either for a long time either.
Yeah.
So it's a good sign that it's a nice school, nice environment to work
really
for. Because often you do hear of horror stories of people like leaving after two years or even less than that because of the work culture and the
high turnover rate.
Yeah, especially in special schools, there's a high turnover rate. Depending on who you're working with and like the senior leadership teams and how much they kind of support different groups of staff members. So I'm very lucky. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I'm similar. Well, in a way, we're both therapists. I'm an occupational therapist, and I worked in a few different places. So not like Amy. She stayed in one. I started, and I still am in the NHS, which is the really big National Health Service in the UK, which obviously it's a privilege to have, but as we all know, it's crumbling. But it's still amazing to work in. And my first job was in a hospital really close to where we are now, and it's a rotational job, so it's a bit like doctors and nurses, I guess, or nurses, where you spend like a certain amount of time in one area and then you move on to the next, and then you basically collect experience in different specialties. And it's really nice to start like that because you just don't know what you want to do and what you want to specialise in. So I spent about 3 years in the hospital just doing rotations and working mainly, we kind of section it into physical health, mental health and children's. That's kind of like the 3 areas you could choose to work in as an OT, and within that there's obviously their specialties. So I worked in physical health, a lot of rehab in a very acute setting, so you can work in A&E, or you could work in like a day surgery, or you could work in liver units. So I did quite a few different areas and it was really interesting. And then after 3 years there, I was like, oh, I want to change, you know. I've done all the rotations that my hospital has to offer me, and I just want to try something new. So I was like, oh, why don't I try children's, like pediatrics? And pediatrics is really hard to get into.
Okay.
When you reach a certain level, I got promoted within the hospital role, and like when you're at that certain band, to kind of go into a different area is difficult because they don't really like that. They kind of want you to start back down again. because everything is so sectioned, you just don't transfer your skills very well.
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a flaw in like the OT world.
Yeah, it's siloed.
Yeah, it's really like, so jumping between them is difficult.
Yeah.
But I did it. I managed to do it.
Right.
And keep my banding. And I'm currently in that role. And I've learned a lot from it. It's like I picked up a lot of skills in like how to like assess and do therapy intervention for children. Picked up some really interesting like techniques. So it's been really, really nice. But it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of red tape in this area specifically. So it really demands a lot of time and energy and effort, and it's got a very high turnover rate. So pediatric OTs just come and go very quickly, and like Amy has this in her school. Like it's just such a high you just can't keep OTs.
It's really hard to find an OT that's pediatrics trained or has pediatric experience from the UK.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of them come from South Africa or Australia or New Zealand, because the way that the universities like teach OT, they have more of an equal kind of training in both peds and adults, whereas in the UK there's not a lot of peds. And when it's COVID hit and when Brexit happened, a lot of the Aussie and Kiwi and South African OTs realised that they pulled down, they went back home. So there was a massive shortage.
And there still is as well.
There still is.
Yeah. So it's been really tough in this job, but like I'm going to a new job, which is great. I've done my time. I managed to hang on for like almost 2 years.
Wow.
I wanted to make it to 2 years really, just so it looked like, I got a decent amount of experience, but I picked things up quite quickly in the job. So, and like, you just know when enough is enough. And I just drew the line and like, so now I'm going into a new role where I'm working in the community. Similar to the pediatric role that I do now, it's community based. So it's basically you go and see people in their homes or their school. So this new job I've got is for adults, and it's in one of the central boroughs of London, which is quite small and nice and compact, easy to travel around, and work with people, adults with like neurological conditions. So a lot of them will be like strokes, so they come out of hospital and I'll see them and do rehab with them for an X amount of time. Or I'll see people who need acute rehab, conditions like spinal cord injuries or any other sort of neurological condition. And then there's also what we call long-term conditions, where people with progressive neurological conditions need like support and disability management. So multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, I guess dementia does fall into that as well. But yeah, any of those, I'll go and see them at home and help them with their rehab, which I'm looking forward to, because it's definitely an area that I know I want to go into. And I've always found it really interesting. So so that's where I'm at with my job.
In regards to the scheduling of your work, your upcoming work, so do you have someone that basically sends you patients? Yeah,
so we get like so we're like a little team of 3 OTs, and because it's NHS, so obviously everything's really well connected. So we get referrals from the GPs, the hospitals, and like I guess any other professionals, and then it gets triaged. So we look at what is the patient needs, and then we kind of categorize them into our 3 streams. And then me being the band 6, I've got 2 seniors above me. It's a very small team. And we're kind of sectioned out to do certain tasks. So I would see more of the strokes coming out of hospital, and some of the more acute rehab non-stroke patients. And so that's how they get sectioned out. If they're a bit more complex, then I would probably start seeing them with the senior OT, or if they think that I'm fine, then just go. But yeah, often that's how it works. Yeah.
Also, for you guys' respective roles, like how is in terms of career progression, like how long do you have to stay in, say, one role before? Is there something afterwards? Or?
It's different in... So
depending on the setting, I don't have much career progression.
Yeah.
Because it's just two of us speech language therapists, and we have a assistant, and my colleague, she's more senior than me, and so there's just two roles basically, and the school only has enough money for a set amount of therapists. So we can only really go up in terms of pay, but we hit a ceiling, and I wouldn't be able to go above my colleague because she's hit her threshold basically. So as comfortable as I am in the day-to-day stuff, in terms of like career progression, there isn't anything unless I move to the NHS or I move into a different team outside of my school, and get like a higher pay banding, which I could probably get. But you're kind of like weighing up pay versus like your day-to-day tasks. I do like what I do now. I have that flexibility. I can see as many kids for therapy as I want. I can manage my caseload quite well. I can manage my day and my timetable quite well. It's all quite... I'm in a bubble.
Yeah. And you've got school holidays.
I've got like a set amount of kids that I can see. Whereas if I was with the NHS, and we have the NHS coming to our school to see our post-16 department, and they have like 3 times as many kids on their caseloads, and they barely get to see them.
So that's my role now.
Yeah. You just kind of see them for reviews, and you just check up on them. But yeah, there's not a lot of opportunity for direct therapy, seeing through like a whole block of therapy. And like I can go into classes and just pick up things. Yeah. And if a teacher says, oh, by the way, they're struggling with this, I can go observe them very quickly and say, okay, you can do this, or here's a card, a visual that you can use with them. It's so much more efficient. Yeah. Where I am now, and I can see the kids and their personality. I can see them grow up basically from year 7 onwards. It's just lovely, and you have developed that relationship with the parents as well. Yeah. And it's fun being part of a school because you see their day to day. Yeah. And all the quirks that come with it, because you discuss it with your colleagues as well. And I mean, half the kids are autistic, and it's just funny the things that you see every day. Yeah. So like I'd go into a classroom and the teacher will say, oh yeah, okay, write your name and the date down on the top of the worksheet. And the child has literally written your name and the date in words at the top. And they're so literal with their understanding, and you just have to find that a really funny moment. It's very amusing, and no one takes it that seriously. You're like, oh yeah, why did I say that? Yeah. Just really simple things like that. It's just really lovely. Those snippets of gold. Yeah. They just make your day. Yeah. And it's not monotonous. Every day is different. The kids can have very up and down days. Yeah. And you still have to use support with that. Emotional regulation. If they're having a bad day, something's changed in their routine, like they're going on a trip or something, or their teacher isn't in and they're really struggling with that fact, or they're moving classes, and you're there to kind of provide that support. So you kind of, it tests your mind cognitively, like what can I do, like think on the spot, like how can I support this child in that moment. But it's going to be a really hard toss up knowing when to leave in terms of career progression,
because the only way is to leave your role now unless your senior leaves and you take her space. And
and
you're
it's
kind of
just
stuck.
very difficult to leave a place like that, because I've got a wonderful team around me, and it's hard to find that as well, that everyone gets along.
Yeah, it's really hard.
And it's just, and you get that support. You feel like you're well supported in your decisions, like your manager trusts you and you trust your manager, and everyone else's decision making is solid, and you work really well together. No one's kind of feeling like they're treading on anyone's toes. So yeah, it's a very difficult decision. But yeah.
With the NHS, it's like you get a lot more progression. So this is like for all the professionals that work in the NHS, you go by band. So there's band 1, which is the lowest, but people don't really start there. They start at band 4 maybe.
Oh, okay.
And there's often like an assistant role. And then band 5 is kind of entry level qualified role. So I started as a band 5. And traditionally you stay in a band for about 2 to 3 years, probably more than that. But actually probably 3+ years usually, because you want to get a really good foundation skill set. But recently, because I mean in OT specifically,
the shortage,
it's like a lot. There's such a shortage, so people progress a lot quicker
within a year.
So we're seeing too quick of a progression really. But I spent about 2 and a bit years as a band 5, and I wanted to do all my so they do have a requirement where you have to do certain areas, and you kind of have to tick off your competencies for that. So I had to make sure I did all of that. And then I applied for a band 6 position, and then so I finished my final year at the hospital as a band 6, and I did a really, really lovely rotation in specialist medicine where I did liver patients, and I loved it. And I also did trauma and orthopedics, which, as much as I loved it, also gave me PTSD from it. But then, and that's why I kind of was like, you know what, I need a break. I need to do something different and not see like injured people every day. Because we were like we're a major trauma centre at the hospital I worked at, so it got all the more serious cases requiring quite specialty like intervention. So I saw the worst of the worst. But yeah, and then I went into pediatrics as a band 6. And I actually managed to apply for a band 7 in pediatrics, which I also got. So, but the new role that I'm going into is back down a level, which I don't mind because it makes sense anyway. And I wanted specific experience in neuro again. But with the NHS, you just get a lot more freedom with the banding. There's just so many more opportunities to go up, and there's so many more hospitals and so many more trusts and other teams and services that you can apply to, because there are just positions opening up all the time. And the same with speech therapy. You see lots of roles of any band, and it's just nice to like apply to quite a few. And you even like, I do interview experience like for the band up, just so you kind of like get an idea of how to do an interview and what skills are needed for that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more progression career-wise in the NHS.
Public service side of things.
Exactly. But then you can also work privately as a therapist. It's quite nice in OT, physio, speech. You can work privately quite nicely, and it kind of like set rates in that way. Private rates are expensive. It's like £80 an hour is like the average.
Wow.
And like, so, you know, you don't even need to have a certain banding level, because as long as you have the right experience and you deliver and the client likes you, then you get paid that rate. You know, so it's really good. And especially in London, you just have so much more clients. It's just dense. You're needed. You're needed all the time. So it's always really nice to be able to do some NHS work, but also like outside work. But yeah, it is difficult to do private work as well. There's a reason why only some people do private work, because you just have a certain demographic of clients, and when they pay for private therapy, there are high expectations, and you know, you do have to deal with certain personalities in that. So it is tricky. So a lot of like, it is really nice to work in the NHS. You get such a variety. You get, you know, the good, the bad, the mediums, you know, all of it. But it is a public service, so it's just
a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. But you do feel like you're supported as like a big force, and you're not on your own as like one private therapist.
You're protected.
Yeah, very protected. The NHS is very protected, which is a good and a bad thing. But that's the job that we do.
So then, I guess for you guys being here for several years now, have you ever considered moving elsewhere?
maybe within the country, but not out of the country, I would say. Like, I could happily live in Scotland or Wales.
I could see you in those places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just really nice areas.
Mm.
And we've got family up there as well.
Right.
And out west. But yeah, within like the UK, for sure, we could kind of move anywhere.
Would you want to live outside of London?
It depends on the timing of it.
What do you mean?
Like, in terms of, like, career-wise and in terms of, like, affordability.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know yet, but I could definitely live out of London, like, when I'm older, but not at the moment. Because, it's not the right time.
Okay.
But I know you quite like the countryside as well.
It's a hard one. It's one that, like, London is great in so many ways, but when you live here after a certain amount of time, you do kind of feel like...
claustrophobic.
Yeah, the downsides of it are definitely that it's quite depersonalized because there are so many people here all the time. So there is a very, like, and it's so busy and it's very work orientated. And it is, there's a lot of young people that generate the energy in London. And, you know, when you start working, you lose the energy. You know? You lose it. You lose the zest after a while. It's still nice to live here, but then you kind of search for something more. And definitely having taken, like, trips out of London, being in the countryside, you feel quite rejuvenated. And obviously, I think it's a natural thing when you get older. You want more space, you want more greenery, you just want better pace of life, better work-life balance, and it's very hard to do that in London. So I can imagine myself living outside of London, but not quite fully leaving London. So maybe spending, like, part of the year in London and part of it out.
Yeah, splitting your time.
Exactly, spending some of it out in the countryside, and just, like, living, like, a nice, more relaxed pace of life.
Gradually transition ourselves.
Yeah.
And having that balance.
Yeah. Because it's such a lovely, like, country that you have, like, the UK has so much green space. It's so rich and, like, very, what do you call it, fertile. The land is so fertile. And the nature is just amazing. But it does, like, you just lose, like, the convenience, and you lose, like, the company of lots of people around you. When you're outside, like, you do probably feel lonely very quickly, or like you feel like, oh my goodness, like where is everyone? You know. Whereas in London, it's like, you know, it's comforting in some ways. But it's a hard one. It's a hard one, but yes, I do see myself moving out eventually, but not fully leaving London. Like, definitely keeping, like, an arm still attached to London. Yeah, which I think is the same for you as well.
Definitely, because you want that kind of convenience to get out and travel, especially being in London. You can be based near the airports and get to places for holidays. So, still having that attachment to London.
But based in the UK, I mean, for me, I don't think I could ever live in Hong Kong or work in Hong Kong.
Or Malaysia.
I think Malaysia's hard because of the language barrier. That's the main thing.
And we don't really have the right to stay there. You'd have to,
And I don't think our professions are actually well established in Malaysia. I know there are OTs and physios and speech therapists, but they're, like, situated mainly in KL or big cities.
And we take a pay cut as well.
It'd be a pretty drastic pay cut.
Defo.
And I guess Hong Kong has, like, OTs, physios, speech therapists. But again, there's a language barrier there, and expensive to live there. To rent. And I just culturally just not as, I don't know.
The humour is very different. I think we like the humour here. We get it. Definitely.
We've ingrained a lot more here, despite living in Hong Kong for longer.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, as part of being mixed as well, that exposure and still having that connection to here, even growing up.
It's so interesting because we have like mixed friends and it's just...
They're a very different experience.
Yeah, well, we have one friend who's very much like she's half English and half Hong Kong Chinese, and her identity is very Hong Kong.
She's very local,
very Hong Kong. But for, I guess, the others of us, like, our identity is based more in the UK.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting. I guess it's like how we're brought up, and maybe like just how we're born. Like our personalities just gravitate to one more than the other, but we just don't have an explanation as to why that is.
Just have an affinity with certain countries more than others.
Right.
It definitely has to do with, I guess, knowing the language really well. Because we're not fluent in Cantonese and we're not fluent in Malay, although we can speak Hokkien. But again, our Hokkien isn't actually great because we learned it from our grandparents, and they have like a limited vocabulary, so we picked up their vocabulary.
We only talk about certain things with them, so like there's like in terms of like food and day-to-day stuff. It's all like market talk. So if they had to talk about like family relationships and things, it wasn't really, or like about the history behind like different parts of the family, like which we didn't really talk about, so we didn't really pick up the vocabulary from that. It was just, what did you get from the market today? This was really cheap, this was not.
Yeah, we only hit a certain level in terms of our fluency and our vocabulary, even though we can like pronounce things really well, and like we're pretty confident speaking it. I guess after a couple of days of like acclimatizing, we haven't used it in a while.
Shaking off the rust.
Exactly. But we wouldn't. I think just not knowing the languages so fluently and like intimately really takes away from that that identity.
You still feel a bit foreign in that sense. Don't you feel like you have that claim to feel local enough. So
do you experience that as well, because you grew up in New Zealand and like you spent a lot of time in New Zealand and Australia more than you have in Hong Kong or, you know, anywhere else really. And like your parents are Malaysian and Hong Kong Chinese. Do you ever feel that like weird like dichotomy like just happening all the time?
Yeah, I'd say so. Especially, there was a lot of times when I would... Because I used to go back to Hong Kong very frequently. Basically, during intermediate school, it'd be for you guys, that would be winter. We would come over.
Summer.
And then there were so many times when I would, say, go to a convenience store. And my Cantonese is to that level where I can... you know, get by with that.
Yeah, you're probably better than us though.
You're definitely better than us.
Maybe.
I think you have the like correct intonation for things, whereas I think it takes us a while. We don't, when we pronounce things, it probably doesn't.
You have to calibrate.
It takes a while. Like, gotta say a few words first.
Right. But then there were times when I think my intonation is good. But then maybe it's because of the way I was dressed, because there were times when, even though it's winter for you guys, it feels fine to just wear like t-shirt and shorts, and then everyone was wearing a puffer jacket.
Yes, literally. We only realised that when we moved here. How wussy we are.
It was ridiculous.
Oh, it's 90 degrees, get the puffers out. 90 degrees was cold in Hong Kong.
Whereas like today it was 19-ish degrees, probably
and we're like, yes, sun.
We were like,
get the sunglasses out, sunblock on.
So there were times when I would say go to a 7-Eleven or something and then speak and just ask for like, where is X and Y, and then they would reply to me in Mandarin.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
They
thought
you were a mainlander.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, is my Canto like that janky? So then I recalled it to my dad and he's like, no, your Canto is fine.
It's probably just the way you dress. Then.
Yeah,
They
so I
probably
think
just assumed.
Well, they probably thought, there's no other reason why this guy can't speak Cantonese. He looks, Chinese.
Yeah.
So he must be a mainlander.
Yeah.
Trying to
That's
speak
so odd.
Cantonese.
Oh, and it's funny as well, because this was definitely because of the way that my brother and I dressed. But I think in total, over like all the times that we've gone back to Hong Kong, I'd say 7 times I've been stopped by the police.
Really?
And they ask for an ID check.
What?
Because they think, and one time they actually explained it to us. They think we're like drug dealers.
Because you just dress like differently from
Yeah,
everyone
like
else.
super casual. Like, why are we wearing shorts? It's really cold.
Oh
So,
my goodness,
yeah.
in winter,
Yeah,
And they're probably like,
Hong
what are
Kong
these
is-
guys?
Hong Kong's so conservative in the way it dresses.
It's very conformist.
Very
isn't it?
conformist. People are wearing like full jeans in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We did that as well.
We did. I don't know how we survived with that.
Yeah.
But it's so conservative.
Yeah.
Well, not so, but it's, in the heat, you still have to dress kind of conservatively.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very samey. Everyone dresses very similar.
Yeah, it's almost like uniform.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
probably stood out
Yeah.
in a way.
It was also the pace in which we were walking around. Because we were on vacation.
Mm.
Yeah.
You were like chilling.
Yeah, so we were casually strolling to...
You look happy.
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. So have
happy.
a spark in our eyes. Not dead inside.
Got stressed about work.
Yeah. So of course we're drug dealers,
What else?
Yeah, exactly, what else?
No explanation.
There was one time when it was me and one of my high school friends who came over to Hong Kong to visit. And, well, our apartment, we had one in Song Wan, and then that one had some like plumbing issues. So then I was staying with my friend in his hotel room, and we were just chilling, and I think he had just arrived, so he was kind of de-jet lagging, and he's basically asked if we could grab some food, and at that time the only thing that was open was McDonald's. And so it's midnight, and we go out of the hotel, and McDonald's is 50-60 meters away, so very close, and we get stopped by the police.
No way.
Yeah.
On your walk to McDonald's.
Yeah. And they're like, what are you doing outside? And then they're just asking all these things, and then I actually remember telling my friend, you should just bring your ID with you, just in case. And we actually needed it.
That's good.
So yeah, he showed his passport to the officer, and then I had my Hong Kong ID card.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, just be on your way.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were on the street for 2 minutes.
They like spotted you.
Yeah, and they just swooped out of nowhere. And they
Wow.
just, ID.
Where did they come from? Like, they're just patrolling? Like,
They're just in a garbage bin. With
like
binoculars.
looking out for people.
Oh, that guy looks sus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, in comparison, we never got stopped.
Right.
Yeah. Clearly they did not want to stop us.
Yeah.
Didn't think we were worth stopping for anything. Probably just looked like tourists or we weren't doing
Definitely
anything
like
dodgy.
racial profiling again, but
Yeah.
like positive racial profiling.
Right.
Call it, yeah.
In
Like,
our favour.
We got away with things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we weren't doing anything bad, obviously. But
Mm-hmm.
they were like overly suspicious of you.
Yeah.
That's
But
crazy.
if I dressed like a local, I would have melted.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd rather just get stopped and then just flash my
Yeah,
card.
because they wouldn't do anything.
Exactly.
You didn't do anything.
So,
wrong.
yeah, I'm not actually dealing drugs.
Yeah.
or anything. I'm just walking around and enjoying the
Absolutely.
city. So
That's crazy that they think that their stereotype of like someone who might potentially be a criminal or someone doing something suspicious is dressed like not like those of locals. When actually, like,
they would be dressed
they would
like
be-
locals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They would definitely be dressed like locals.
Yeah, I never understood it, and then you just shrug it off.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah, it basically became a ritual where every year we go back,
You
there'd
just
be
get stopped.
yeah.
You're like, okay, let's get our IDs ready.
Yeah.
We're gonna be stopped again.
Yeah, here we go.
Anytime.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think... Yeah, that never happened to us.
Mm.
We're very lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, very lucky.
But would you guys... if you don't, like, consider, say, moving back to Hong Kong or to Malaysia, would you consider other Western countries?
No.
Not for you?
No.
Any particular reasoning?
I just...
Just no.
I think it's more...
Yeah.
It's having to get used to another culture.
Okay.
Like, even if they do speak English there, say, like, America or Australia.
Yeah.
Like, even though they speak English, it's still a different culture to get used to.
Okay.
And I feel in tune with English culture, British culture, that I know that, you know, I don't want to have a different one to get used to.
Okay.
Yeah, and just the way that the system works here, I'm so used to it as well. Whereas in other countries, it could be very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm just very comfortable here.
Right.
Yeah. Don't
Fair
want to
enough.
change.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, to be fair. Like, I don't think I've really... I'm open to it.
Yeah.
But right now, not really.
Mm.
But maybe, like, later in my life, if I, you know, if I feel like, oh, maybe I can work somewhere else, or I feel like, oh, that's a nice country to go to.
It's
or
time
like,
for a change.
Yeah, like, I'd be definitely open to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the moment, not so much.
Right.
Yeah, I did consider at one time going to Australia because they're like recruiting OTs because it's on the national shortage list.
Yeah.
And they do pay quite nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, at the same time, I was like, it's so far away, you know, from the UK.
Right.
Even though it's closer to Malaysia, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that hasn't really happened, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
I think just keep an open mind.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a base here and have... I think we're well placed in England currently to travel to places.
Yeah.
And having a base here helps to even just have our stuff secure, and then we can go off and travel if we need to. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
If I was to choose like a country, I would choose somewhere like Spain or Italy to live, or anywhere on the Mediterranean coast.
Yeah.
It's sad that Brexit doesn't really allow for that to happen. Like, I think people obviously own houses in Europe before Brexit, and they can go easily between the two places. Whereas now that's not really possible with the Brexit agreement. There's not more restrictions in place. So,
but I think it's not the worst because like in France you can stay there for like up to 6 to 9 months, and then you can apply for a visa. So you can like stay in Europe for stints at a time as a UK like passport holder. But it, as you say, Amy, it's like more difficult to settle there.
Right. And then the language barrier.
The language barrier, yeah. It depends on where you live as well. If you don't live in the city part, like you are probably expected to learn the language.
Yeah.
Which
isn't hard to pick up, to be fair.
And it's quite a nice thing, like, I definitely find myself wanting to learn languages more as I get older. I guess because you kind of start to see the world as a whole and you kind of want to really just try out different things, or like you're just a bit bored of your surrounding culture. So yeah, I definitely would like to explore somewhere else and even like try living somewhere else, learning language, having lovely food. That would definitely be
an ideal.
Very, I definitely would consider that.
100%.
Yeah. I guess that's probably what you get to sample that when you're on your world tour.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Although it has also kind of reinforced the fact that New Zealand and Australia, the produce there is just so great. It's so fresh. And because of that, the cuisine is a reflection of the produce that they use. So
What is Australian cuisine?
Besides
what is
barbecue?
No, okay, no, so
I actually really want to know.
we're not talking about the cultural cuisine of the country, but you know,
the produce being really fresh,
and then when you convert that into say Chinese food, you know, all the different Asian foods, and then there's now a lot more, you know, like Middle Eastern, even African food. Like I know a really nice Ethiopian restaurant.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, yeah, because of all the cultures coming in and the fact that they can source a lot of their, you know, home ingredients now. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
so,
quality.
Yeah, I think as a culinary capital of the world, both Sydney and Melbourne do have like world-class food, and a lot of it is also very affordable. Because one thing, I guess because of the strength of the pound and the US dollar, you can eat well here and over in the States, but it's way more expensive compared to, you know, back home. So, yeah, it's tough, especially if you're not working here, and then, you just look at the bill and you're like,
yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, it hurts.
It hurts.
It really hurts.
I mean, the US wouldn't be that bad, but then you have to add the tipping and then the tax as well, the state tax. So, yeah, it's almost, for most places, an additional third on top of the menu price.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm not looking forward to. The tipping and...
Yeah, when you go visit.
Yeah.
I assume when you go to Europe, be interested to see how you find the food there, because it's so different. And you have like the Mediterranean side, and then you have the more Northern Europe, Southern and Northern Europe side.
Right.
It'll be interesting for you to try the Southern Europe cuisine, because you get really nice, like, you know, like the tomatoes, the cheese, the olive oils, like all of that is just so rich and fresh. Yeah, I'd like to see your opinion on that when you do go there.
Oh yeah, my spicy food takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, well, I have been to Europe once, so that was at the end of 2018, but that was only a handful of countries. So I went to France, Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany. So just 4 countries, and honestly, the food was below, and I think a lot of people have the same kind of, it's very hyped up where you think, oh, French cuisine, ooh la la, you know, and then you go there and like, okay. I mean, we went to a Michelin star restaurant, and I think that was for lunch, and it was alright. I mean, it didn't, I think the price didn't justify the quality of the food. So, but then there was, I remember it was like a family-run restaurant out in the suburbs of Paris, and that was my favorite meal of the trip, because it was just the son was the chef, his mom was the like front of house, and she could like barely speak any English, so we kind of just pointed at the menu, and then she was like nodding and smiling, and the food was so great.
That's always the best, the rustic, the most like the least, I guess, traffic, like touristy kind of ones.
To get authentic stuff.
Yeah. And it was literally a hole in the wall, you know, there was like 4 tables maybe, and I remember, dude, I think it's a cassoulet, it was like the bean stew.
Yeah. Was the best.
Yeah, it blew my mind. It was so good. Like, is this real life? It was so good.
Yeah, Europe is probably like, I guess, inconsistent in terms of the food that you get.
Right.
Probably compared to Australia. I mean, I've never tried or been there long enough.
Yeah.
I don't remember what we even had when we went to Australia to eat.
But it does sound like from your experience, it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
It's not as, you know, you just never know the quality of the food.
It's a gamble.
Yeah, it's a gamble. And you probably expect to be disappointed sometimes.
Pretty much. Yeah, my bar going in now is kind of low, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, we go over to Europe for trips, especially with our friends as well. We tend not to do all our food like eating out. We would often just go to the local supermarket and get food to cook in our Airbnb.
Yeah.
A, to save money, but also B, like, you kind of know what food you like, but then there's still the opportunity to try like the local like cuisine.
Yeah.
But not to the extent where like you're sacrificing having like a change in, I don't know, like not being used to the food.
Right.
But yeah, you get that happy mix of two things.
Right.
That's what we try and do. Yeah, keep it simple.
Definitely.
Is there any place that you've traveled to in Europe where you basically feel like this food is not good?
I don't.
It's more the colder countries.
It is the northern.
I think because we're not used to I guess the food groups that are in the diet there.
Yeah.
We're not kind of used to it. Lack of like vegetables, like fresh vegetables and fresh fruits is mostly kind of pickled and lots of meat heavy, carb heavy, which we're not used to having.
Yeah, it's a lot more preserved.
Like,
what do you call it when they're like kept in vinegar or like they're pickled?
Pickled.
Yeah, a lot more of those paired with like just plainer vegetables or root vegetables.
Right.
I guess because that's what's available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like the Poland.
Yeah,
Eastern
Poland,
Europe
Eastern
kind of
Europe,
area.
even like Scandinavian countries
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
Those
right.
kind of countries.
Yeah.
It's a lot blander.
Yeah.
Quite bland, but it's meant to keep for longer and sustain you for longer.
Yeah.
Whereas you get more flavour the further south you go.
The more temperate areas.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you move from like beer country to wine country.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh whoa.
Yeah. You do see that shift, even though I guess France is the exception to that rule.
Yeah.
France is like a wine country, north and south,
Mm-hmm.
but everywhere else, if you draw a line through Europe,
Yeah.
you do see that divide.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. One of my tour mates, I'm pretty sure it was Joe. Shout out to Joe. He was saying how, due to climate change, there's now a really like abundance of basically champagne, but grown in the UK.
Yes, there are more vineyards now opening up in the
Yeah.
south of the UK.
Yeah.
They had like a feature on it like last year on the BBC. And like, yeah, people that have vineyards here are actually producing things that are like similar quality.
Yeah.
I mean, French probably wouldn't argue that they were. But we're actually able to sustain like vineyards.
Yeah.
in the
Because it's just
south.
warmer now.
It's warmer,
Yeah.
yeah. Which isn't a good thing, I guess. But
It's weird because it still feels cold
yeah,
for like most of the year.
Right.
yeah.
It's weird.
It's still raining 80% of the time.
Yeah. That's interesting. I guess they couldn't call it champagne because it has to be made
Yeah.
in Champagne.
So it's British sparkling wine.
Yeah.
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 Which doesn't have as much of a ring to it
No.
as champagne.
M&S, sparkling wine.
M&S.
Bring
Oh,
it-
yeah.
Bring it back to a good level. Yeah.
Is there any place that you guys really want to visit? Like something on the top of your list?
In the world.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I would say actually quite a lot of different countries, to be fair.
Yeah, hard to pick one.
Yeah.
Really.
Top of the list, it would be America.
Oh,
Yeah, interestingly.
wow. I
America.
did not expect that at all.
Yeah. I think certain parts of America, I think what I want to see is like the parts of America that have like amazing nature.
Alright. Just like, I want to go to Ohio. What is there? I don't know.
Like there's lovely like mountainous river like
Oh, yeah.
places.
Yeah.
I've seen it like on TV. I don't even know. I know there's so many states there.
And like the redwood forests, they
Yeah.
look beautiful there.
Yeah.
Just expansive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can just drive for miles and miles
Yeah.
through somewhere, and it's just such a big place. Like, you could just feel like, you know, it's never ending.
And it's like road trip
huge.
country.
It is.
It is road trip
Yeah.
country. So
Yeah.
definitely a road trip in America.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's such a broad.
Yeah, I think I would second that.
Just any road trip that takes me through those kind of places would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and parts of Asia even would be great. I think
Bhutan.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, Bhutan.
Yeah.
Where else?
I'd say the Himalayan region of India.
Oh yeah.
That would be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I have a colleague who's like near from that area, and he says it's just so different from like what we imagine India to be, like Mumbai
And Delhi.
and Delhi. Yeah, those are so like. Just I don't think I'd even want to go there because it's so like busy and overloaded. Like, but the more mountainous regions would be really nice to go and see. So those are mine. What about you?
Yeah, I think same.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think seeing a different side of Asia than what we normally have seen.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more nature to the cities that we've normally been to and lived in. It would be nice to kind of explore more of that, and especially like you said with Indonesia, you've got all the lovely seaside areas, beautiful diving locations, nature. We've been to Borneo, and that was beautiful and lovely. Yeah.
Have you guys been to Japan?
Once before.
Yeah.
When we were quite young, to see our mum's friends.
Oh.
But we only went to Fukuoka.
Yeah.
So we never went to Tokyo or what's a really famous
Like Kyoto.
Kyoto, yeah.
We haven't been to those more touristy places, but we did go close to. We went to Mount Fuji. We didn't go up it, but we we stayed in like a lodge there that our mum's friend wanted to go to because it had fondue.
Okay.
She wanted to have Swiss fondue, and we're like, great,
In Japan.
we're in Japan. So we had some nice cheese fondue there. I remember that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we had lots of like really good like ramen. Yeah, just the food there is amazing. And we stayed with the family, so we played lots of Wii.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
I would definitely want to go to Tokyo.
Yeah.
I think because it's so... Tokyo and Hong Kong are such, like, influential cities in terms of, like culturally, like, when you think about anime and any... like, they're just so strong and they're so quite similar in many ways. Like, artistically, like... I think
so many parallels.
The depictions of... You can really, like, see the overlap there. But they're very different, obviously.
Yeah.
I think it'd be really nice to see Tokyo and experience it.
Can recommend.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's the largest city in the world, I believe.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So, I don't want to say the wrong number, but yeah, like millions and millions of people live in Tokyo. And it's gigantic. If you look at like the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, it could be as big as like some countries.
Wow.
Gosh.
It's huge.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
On that note.
Yeah.
Let's have dinner.
Do you have any like final remarks for the listeners or?
Well, no, thanks for having us on your podcast.
Thanks.
Of course. Yeah.
Thanks for visiting.
Yeah, no, this has
Bye.
been so great.
Yeah.
I love London, and the whole. I think like this is just a great start to what is the second leg of my trip, and then moving on to Europe, and then being able to catch up with a few friends in Europe as well. Yeah, just feels so good.
Yeah, you've done it the right way around as well. Because
Yeah.
like if you hadn't met all these like tour mates who come from Europe, like you know, and you done it the other way around.
Yeah.
that might have been a bit more difficult in terms of like meeting up with people. Like
For sure.
now you can go back and like, oh, I know this person lives here and there, and yeah, that's really nice.
But one thing I did want to say, so in terms of like family structure, there's you guys, then there's like my brother and I, and then we have our cousins in the US, Alex and Randall.
Yeah.
And I believe, so what day is it today?
19th.
Yeah, so it's been about a month since I saw Alex and Randall. And I hadn't seen them for, close to 2 decades. But then, spending time with them and now spending time with you guys, I'm just, like, very grateful that, like, we as cousins are the way that we are now. Yeah, it just feels really great. Like, the dynamic is nice, and I just feel very fortunate, because I know a lot of, like, families, it can be a bit disjointed, and then there's always, every, family has drama, but I'm just, so happy that we can be...
We're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think...
Even though we live so far apart.
We're all across the ponds.
Yeah.
Massive ponds.
Massive ponds. So, hopefully we can get some sort of reunion at some point.
Absolutely.
In the next couple of years.
I think that would be really nice.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think we all want to do that. We just have to like line up all our schedules. And find somewhere that's like we all want to go to.
We'll just create a group chat.
Sort that out.
Yeah, I think that would be really nice. And you just going and visiting all of us is so nice, because it kind of ties that together even more. And obviously we're going to see Randy and Alex too. So I think that'd be great. Set something up.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen.
I'm pumped.
Has to be soon.
Get the ball rolling.
Sure. But we'll wrap up the episode now. Thanks for listening, and until next time.